Thanks everyone for joining today, this afternoon. Appreciate it. My name's Wayne Johnson. I'm the Group Executive, head up the business in the Hunter Valley for ARTC. Pleased to be with you this afternoon. Since Damien White, who you've seen present at these forums previously, he's recently retired. I've been supporting Scott and the SWIP team in terms of the trajectory and the work ahead of us here across the nation about how we go about simplifying and improving protections for track workers across the country. You're going to hear a bit from the team today in terms of an update around the provision of the safe working solutions. You'll also hear an update around the safety critical information from Corey and the team. So both progressive updates of the program to date, as well as from James Kennedy around the progressive work we're doing around the contractor safety management improvement, including a number of inputs we've had from some of our key suppliers through that work. Now, importantly today, and we thank everyone for making the time available, we continue to work across this program and we understand the dimensions of its work reach into many areas of your own work, your teams, and particularly other providers across the network, and continue to work collaboratively with other adjoining network providers as well. I think it's worth just surmising back to the start of our focus around the Safe Work Improvement Program, as well as the journey. We're still focused heavily around getting the foundations in place across the business and focused extensively now on the change management aspects around embedding those and making sure we're refining those operationally across the areas. So the team continue to work closely and listening carefully to a number of the ARTC teams across the business, as well as a number of the colleagues, the industry colleagues on this call today. And that advice as we head forward will be critically important to the refined embedded outcome we end up with. Again, thank you for your participation in today, and I know the team are ready for some questions they will take some questions from the session and provide feedback for anything that can't be answered throughout the call today. Now, Scott, is there anything you'd like to update further before I hand straight to Kath?
Thanks, Wayne. No, from my perspective, I think you've covered it. But this is the last one for the year. There's been a lot happen this year, and it is ongoing as you'll see as we continue these briefings into next year. But we continue to deliver against the SWIP program. So just look out for these sort of sessions, these ongoing sessions next year to keep people informed and engaged. So thank you.
Thanks, Scott. And I would say thank you to all of the members of the Safe Work Improvement team. You've made some significant progress for the year. Been out on site with the relinquishment of some controls in New South Wales recently, and I can tell you a number of the areas that I can already see in operation, teams using, talking about, including some of our contracted safe working providers in action today. So I can see a number of the positive changes already taking place, and really look forward to how we make further progress into next year. And I'll hand to yourself, Kath.
Thanks, Wayne. If we could have the next slide. Hi, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Kath Bolzer, Principal Advisor for Safety and Environment for the Interstate Division and the Major Construction Projects Division. I'm also Project Manager for Project A, which is all around, as we've discussed before, the framework for an assurance process for the management of safe working resources into ARTC. Next slide, please, Alice. Thanks. So as we've talked before, Project A is around the requirement to have an assurance process for the provision of our safe working resources. We've introduced the concept of a panel of safe working providers before, and today we're here to discuss the self-performer approval process, which sits within that framework. So this is applicable for organisations that specifically employ safe working personnel. So when I say safe working personnel, I mean the protection officers in New South Wales, track force protection coordinators in Victoria, and track workers in SA, and those that wish to use them for the contract that they hold with ARTC. It's a process whereby an organisation applies to ARTC to gain approval to use this safe working resources that they employ, and they will have to meet the approval criteria that's been set out by ARTC. And the key to this is the approval process is largely the same as that we're requiring for our panel members, so there's no real distinction between the two processes. If your organisation is successful in gaining that approval, you will be able to use the safe working resources that you employ on the contracts with ARTC. However, if you need additional resources, so non-employees, these must be sourced from the panel, from our Safe Working Services panel. If your organisation is not successful in gaining approvals, then again, your organisation will be required to use the safe working resources from the ARTC Safe Working Services panel. If you'd like to know more about that, please register for a meeting, and this is going to focus on the details of the self-performer process, and we'll be able to take any questions that you might have by the 5th of December. I'm now going to hand over to Richard.
Thank you, Catherine. So I'm Richard Tudor. I'm a category manager at ARTC. What this slide shows is how the self-performer approval process fits in with the wider context of Project A. There's a framework that's a parent document that sits over the Safe Working Services panel, and then the self-performer approval process itself. So by way of quick recap, we implemented a framework for the provision of safe working services. This sets out our requirements for organisations providing safe working services. It's applicable to all externally provided safe working services, and it's applicable to those services provided to ARTC, our contractors and our external parties. There's going to be two groups of organisations approved to provide externally provided safe working services. So the first group will be the panel members under the Safe Working Services panel. And just by way of update, the tender for this panel was released to market on 11th of November, closes 17th of December. And if you're interested in finding more out about that panel tender, or if you've got any questions, you can access the tender documents via tender link, and there's a tender link forum you can use to raise any questions. And just for clarity on this call, we won't be taking any questions relating to the panel tender on this forum or through any other forum other than the tender link forum for that tender. The second group of organisations that will be approved to provide safe working resources and services to ARTC will be the self-performer group. So this self-performer approval process will provide a pathway for organisations that employ safe working resources to apply for approval to use these resources to provide safe working resources on contract that they hold with ARTC. And if the self-performer requires additional resources over and above the ones they employ, then again, they'd have to go through to the panel. And the key date to bear in mind for this process is that the panel on the self-performer approval process will go live on 1 July 2022, so that's next year. And from that point, you'll have to be approved to provide safe working resources, or you'll have to go through the panel. It's back over to Kath.
Thanks, Richard. So if we said the approval criteria is largely consistent with those required for the panel members and includes things like ensuring the safe workers have been trained and their competencies have been verified, fitness for work requirements including fatigue management, being able to measure and report on the performance of the safe workers that you employ, and we'll be looking at to ensure that you have the systems in place for dissemination of safety critical information and how you investigate and report your incidents. We'll also be looking to ensure you've got assurance mechanisms in place for auditing and assuring your safe workers, and there's a mentoring system to address any performance issues. Whilst training will be up to the organisations to determine, it's up to you whether you have professional development and training in there. Obviously, if you don't have the safe workers at the required level, you have to go to the panel. And we'll also be looking to ensure you've got a records management system to store that safety critical information that we require as per the Rail Safety National Law. Next, Richard.
Okay, thank you, Kath. And I guess in summary on that slide, the criteria for the self-performers is very, very similar and very consistent with those required for the panels. So we've got a really good level of a really good standard and really good commonality there. So it's yeah, it should be nice and clean to apply. What this slide shows is the envisaged approval process for the self-performer approval process. This will be run through our Avetta system that we currently use today to manage our pre-qualification of suppliers. So if an organisation is interested in becoming a self-performer, the first step they need to do is register with Avetta if they're not already registered, and then complete a questionnaire that's part of ARTC's wider questionnaire, and will include the safe working questionnaire required to be a self-performer. We would then, ARTC, review the submissions received, and if approved, we'll add approved self-performers to a register and make sure that ARTC employees are informed and aware of who's on that list. We envisage there being periodic reviews conducted and required to maintain your approval as a self-performer. And again, there'll be periodic reporting for self-performers in terms of providing information about the services that they've completed to our manager of rail safety assurance, which is a role that we're currently in the process of recruiting. Over to Kath.
Thanks, Richard. So in terms of the benefits and what's in it for you, you'll have the ability to use your own employees, people that you know and you trust, to provide those safe working resources for contracts that are held with ARTC. We'll also be looking to work really closely together with you as one team to really improve the standard of safe working across the rail industry as a whole. And we'll also be looking at what technological advancements you've got and what we can share with you, and those systems and processes to really drive those improvements within the rail industry as a whole. Rich.
Okay, so this slide shows the key dates associated with the self-performer approval process. I think the key ones, as Kath's mentioned, this is almost like an appetizer, really, in terms of what the self-performer approval process is about. If you're interested in finding out more, we'll hold a focus session. It's either going to be sort of mid-December or late January, so either side of the Christmas period. And the idea is that if you're interested, let us know by December 5th. We'll make sure you're included on that invite, and we'll go into a lot more detail and cover off on the content in more detail with parties that it's more relevant to. And again, everyone's welcome to that session, but you'll just need to register. And we'll give you the process and the registration details on the wrap-up email to this session today. The aim of this is to have everything in place by 1 July 2022. So from that point, again, you'll have to be approved to provide safe working services to ARTC. So that is either as a panel member or as a self-performer. But please bear that date in mind. And what we'd like to do is have the self-performer approval process open for application around March, April time, to allow time for submissions to be issued and reviewed, and so that we can get everything ready to go for 1 July 2022.
Thanks, Rich. So some key takeaways just from me. The self-performer approval process, it's following exactly the same framework that we've used for the panel members for our provision of safe working services. The application process, as Rich said, will be open for March in Avetta. While applications will be ongoing, as of the 1st of July, if you do not have approval to use your own in-house resources, you will have to get your safe working resources from the panel. You will be able to apply after that to become a self-performer, but until you're approved, you'll have to use the panel members from the 1st of July. And we'll continue to communicate on the progress of this project and our panel members and those accepted as we go through the next few months. Thank you. Over to Corey.
Thanks, Kath. Good afternoon, everyone. Corey Hill. I'm looking after the Safety Critical Information Project. But today, what I'll be talking to is probably a key component of the project, which is to establish a single point of access to current notices, waivers and alerts. Overall, though, the project aims to enable key information to be accessed through one location, again, providing current and clear content, as well as avenues to clarify understanding. So if you don't understand something, who you can actually talk to about that, and supported by internal procedures that have clear accountability to maintain. Now, for anyone using our website, accessing our information can be quite daunting, and after a lot of consultation with contractors, customers, as well as other rail infrastructure maintainers, it was clear that ARTC documents are not easily accessible or can be accessed from one spot. You can see in the bubbles, these are some of the common responses. One that really stands out to me probably the most is I Google search to find notices. Now, I suppose the risk that comes with that is if your Google search picks up alternate documents, then the information may not actually be current. If you do find this occurring, then please definitely contact us, email us, swip@artc.com.au. And that's another reason, again, why we're looking at that single point of access, where you'll be able to access current information. So the sites that you can access from there, they'll have the current information on. So how's it going to impact you? Provide easily accessible web page linking to current notices. It's going to be quicker. Sometimes some of the documents can be 7 clicks into the website. We can now get you, within 2 clicks to the information that you actually need. And the intent is obviously to remove the need for Google searching our information, so you don't call up conflicting information. Yep, next slide. So based on consultation, this has allowed us to come up with what you'll see now. Note though, this page will evolve. So as we review documents, as we improve, we seek feedback from people around continuous improvement, this page will evolve, but it will still continue to be that single point of access to notice waivers and alerts. As mentioned, our focus is really providing that single point of access to current notices, waivers and alerts, and providing better information accessibility. So the single point of access is expected to go mid-December. There will be communications out there will be communications on the day it goes live, but you will see them coming through. And then based on what you've seen today, even the previous website, the email SWIP for any improvement opportunities or feedback post go live. We'll also be asking that in the communication. So if you can, when you do get the notification, go in, check it out, provide your feedback. It will be listened to, so we can continually improve the way we get information or current information out to different audiences across the industry. So it was really just a quick snapshot of the key focus of a specific outcome that we're trying to achieve. Further briefings will give you further development of the wider project as well. So thank you for your time. And I'm going to pass over to James Kennedy. He's the Program Manager, Contractor Safety. So James is leading the Contractor Safety Program, and again, another ARTC initiative focused on work health and safety aspects of our engagement with contracting partners. So I'll hand it over to James.
Great, thank you, Corey. We'll just jump into that first slide there, Alice. So this is an interesting subject of work that I'm looking into here. Contractor safety management goes hand in glove with SWIP. It's not strictly the SWIP program, it is a parallel program of work. So let's make sure that we keep an eye on the work health and safety aspects of our engagements. When we look at contractor work across ARTC, it's typically high risk construction work. That means we are doing high risk activities. activities that can cause harm to people and equipment. We're doing it in the rail environment, which is inherently a high-risk environment. And if you look at safe work improvement, that's about making sure that we manage the environment. And additionally, we do it under high pressure situations. So let's do it during a track possession. So you've got a perfect pressure cooker of risk with high risk activity, high risk environment and high pressure work. Concerningly, we are actually seeing a worsening trend of contractor incidents and personal injuries in our current statistics. And this is a trend that we need to reverse. Enter the Contractor Safety Management Program. This program has been developed using a continuous improvement approach. There's a lot of stuff that we do well. There's a lot of stuff that we do that needs refinement. There's a lot of very smart people working across a very diverse organisation. So the approach has definitely been to integrate the existing ARTC systems and processes before we throw it all out and develop new ones. There are 5 main pillars that we look at as a part of this program. The first one is, let's get back to basics and get our house in order. Let's define the responsibilities of ARTC contractor managers. Let's make sure they're trained and the development programs are there for our people and that model is sustainable. This work is underpinned through a contractor management procedure, which clearly defines how we go about doing this work and provides tools and systems for our people to then provide consistency across the organisation. The second pillar is safety management and reporting. Now, this is where we take the contractor management procedure and the guidelines and then turn that into clear expectations of our contractors. So contractors know what they're shooting for. They know what ARTC is expecting. There are tools like joint contractor and ARTC incident investigation. Rather than retreating to separate corners and doing incident investigations, let's do this together so that we all learn from the outcomes. Of course, we also need to track the trends of our performance to make sure that this work that we're doing and validate that it is actually effective. The third pillar talks about contractor relationships. These are on a lot of our contracts, especially those over $250,000 in value, we have a principal contractor arrangement in place. And this is where ARTC appoints a contractor to manage work health and safety at a workplace. We need to ensure as a part of that, that those contractors that are engaged to do such work are discharging their safety duties responsibly. And this is a clear requirement under the legislation, but we want to bring that to life in our context. We have a complex environment within which we need to implement this. So we need to provide further advice to our people and our contractors as to how to do this work in our environment. We also need to build and manage our relationships across ARTC and our contracting partners. The fourth pillar gets into the pre-qualification and procurement realm. Previously, Richard talked about Avetta. Avetta is a platform that we use to manage pre-qualification and ensuring that those contractors that we engage meet some basic requirements before we even throw a contract on the table. That questionnaire that underpins Avetta has undergone a significant strengthening and review process to ensure that it is bespoke to ARTC's requirements. And when contractors go through it, it just makes sense. When there's a green tick, it means something and it gives us all confidence that we're ready to play. There's another link through Avetta that we're building to link contractor performance to supply selection. So good performance can be recognised and will be a consideration for future tendering activities. The fifth pillar is around the ARTC contract templates. Under this, we're reviewing and revising our contract templates and the work health and safety aspects of those templates to make sure that the safety expectations that have been developed through the other pillars are really clearly outlined in our contract suite. There will also be, for those contracts where a principal contractor is being engaged, there will be a specific principal contractor specification that clearly outlines our requirements and is written into the contract so the contractor knows exactly what they've priced and what the expectations are on both parties. The contractor management procedure suite is quite comprehensive, but it's been written to be pragmatic. As Wayne said in his introduction, this suite has been developed with broad consultation across the business. So we've leaned on our interstate partners, our Hunter Valley partners, major construction projects and inland rail to review these procedures and the checklists to make sure that we've got some really practical tools for our people and our contractors to use. And this is a part of making sure that we set clear expectations. Simple things like a safe work method statement checklist. What is it that a contractor needs to prepare to sail through the review process for a safe work method statement? There are other simple tools such as a pre-mobilisation checklist, and this is designed to make sure that projects are set up for success before we set foot on site. Okay, so what's the timing? I'm pretty excited to say that through Wayne Johnson and Darren Thompson in the Hunter Valley, we're going to accelerate the rollout so that we have some felt difference in experience in the Hunter Valley for the February 2022 close down. Now, what this means is we're going to focus on things like the safe work method statement review, the pre-mobilisation checks, and those ongoing practical reviews of our contractors on site to get some felt experience out on site so that when we go on site, we're confident that those sites are set up well. We're not going to overwhelm the teams, and there's not going to be a lot of difference for our contractors. It really is just going to be an increased level of rigour and diligence through the planning phase, our T-minus phase, and then some more questions asked of contractors during the delivery phase for work that they're already contracted to do. An important point there as we're going through this is that any questions will be directed to your ARTC contractor manager. So that'll be the project manager or the contract representative. And this is local sponsor led work. So rather than it going back to a corporate centre for question and answers, project managers and the frontline staff are empowered to deliver this work and embed it. Now, from an ARTC wide approach, we need to take a much more measured approach because we're talking about scaling it up to the entire suite. Now, these tools will be implemented in Q1 2022 with a very comprehensive training and development program being rolled out in Q1 to Q3 2022. And this is where we train our people up. And this will be a phased implementation approach where people will be trained in how to use it rather than just rolling it out and steamrolling our sites with all this new way of doing things. We'll be working with our people to make sure that we embed this in a phased and sustainable approach. The new principal contractor specification and amended contract templates are on target for incorporation into new contracts in Q1 2022. I'll just make that point that we're not looking at making any retrospective changes to existing contracts. This will only affect future contracting work. So what does this mean for our contractors? There are lots of benefits, and this is taken through consultation from across the business. Things like consistent expectations of our contractors across the national business. It'll feel the same working in the Hunter Valley or on the interstate or major construction projects. The standard will be consistent and will be consistently high. Improved understandings of and compliance with our obligations under the law. So this will help everyone understand what our obligations are and provide simple tools for us to meet those obligations. We need not fear the auditor coming at the door because we're going to be very squeaky clean. Increased knowledge and capability of ARTC contractor manager teams and being able to work with our contractors to set projects up for success, and recognition of contractors who perform well and keep people safe. This will influence future work winning, so good performance will be rewarded by future consideration. Consistent focus on safety for work both inside and outside the rail corridor. We traditionally have a very strong focus on work inside the rail corridor. We're going to bring that level of focus to work outside the rail corridor where high-risk construction works are performed. Consistent forms of engagement and work health and safety inclusions across the business, so our forms of contract will be consistent and there'll be no surprises for contractors regardless of where they work for ARTC. And this will lead to a consistent contractor felt experience. And this is how it feels to be on an ARTC site. You'll know you're on an ARTC site. It'll feel consistent from across the business. And the main reason we're doing this is reduced incidents and injuries, and everyone will benefit from that. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Very comprehensive report. And so now I get to talk to you about what's coming up in 2022, which I'm pretty excited about, to be honest. But first, we'll take a moment and we'll look at what we're living and what we've experienced in Q3 and Q4 of 2021. Our first external briefing session that we had was in June, July 2021. So this is sort of what's come through since that overall briefing session. So as you're all aware, we've had revised pre-work brief and worksite protection plan procedures and templates come through, and they are being used in the field as we speak today. We've had our safety critical communications procedure come through. We've had our PAC principles come through. And I know everyone is focused very, very intently on making sure that those new principles and processes get actually embedded into our culture and into the way we discuss with each other. Also, what we've lived in Q3 and Q4 is the corridor access management, and corridor access management is now live across all areas of the business throughout Hunter Valley and interstate, and is being used every single day in every conversation between track access and network control. Now, the final thing, which is super brand new, the latest app for KM2Me has just been released on Android. And it's only come out in the last 2 weeks. So if you haven't heard about that, that's because it's so brand new. It's hot off the press. If you know anyone who has an Android phone that regularly accesses track, whether they're train drivers, track staff, anyone, please let them know that they can use the KM2Me app now. It's an individual location. It uses the GPS on your phone to tell you exactly where you are on track, with the specific kilometres, assists with photo taking, and a whole lot of other things. So that's an absolutely brilliant resource. And the more downloads and the more people that we get using that will be more people safe on track. So please spread the word. As we heard from Corey, so coming up, what's happening now is that notices, waivers and alerts, single point of truth. So we'll be sending some emails out for that in December. Then you'll get the link to be able to access those notices, waivers and alerts in a much more simplified, easy to use system. As we heard from Kath and Richard, we're aiming to have our framework for provision of safe working services come through from the 1st of July 2022. And as you've seen in previous updates and today's update, there's a fair bit of work to set up that system before it actually goes live. The next item that's coming through in 2022 is our non-technical skills development program. So that's just been piloted within our business units as a test run to see what changes we needed to make to the program. And that's due to be trained out to our staff come early 2022. And there'll be more information on that in the upcoming briefings that we have. And if you do want to go back and have a look at July's briefing session, I'll pop a link in the email that we send out next week to July's recorded session that had a bit of detail on the non-technical skills program if you are interested. And then the final thing, and the big one that's really aiming for a transformational change, is our project on standardised application of track protection. We've given ourselves quite a few goals to try and get things designed and set up for June 2022, and they'll be presented to you once we've actually created the design in our upcoming sessions. But that final one there is one of our big projects that SWIP's starting to spend a fair bit of attention and focus on. As always, if you have any questions or concerns or curiosities, please send us an email at swip@artc.com.au, and we're more than happy to have a chat with you, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So I'm now going to hand over to Richard, who's going to be hosting some questions.
Good afternoon to everyone. My name's Richard Clark. I'm the Programme Manager for the Safe Work Improvement Programme, and I'm here to help direct the questions. You are able to post questions in the live event question and answers. We'll try and get through as many questions as we can possibly today, but what we will do is for the questions that we can't respond to today, we will actually submit the questions and responses as we distribute a link to this session. So if there are any questions, we already have had a few, but if there are any questions, can we please place them in the Q&A? I'll just start my working way through. Some of the questions I won't be able to respond to because they aren't directly related to the presentations given today, so I'll need to reach out to the people delivering some of these solutions to understand, especially around some of the parameters in the KM2Me app. There's a question which I will pass across to Corey, which I think he will have across in relation to our safety critical information. In terms of the work that we're doing, which are there any new guidelines and processes for severe weather events? And are you looking to achieve ISCA ratings on all your capital works programs? Oh, sorry, that's maybe a bit different. So I think that's across to James on there at the moment.
Sorry, I'll quickly jump in. Currently, the weather alert procedure is being reviewed. I'm not sure because I'm not the process owner for that procedure regarding the ISCA ratings on capital works programs. I think that's something we'll have to chase up outside of this forum.
I can answer the question on the ISCA ratings. So we currently have them on for the main projects, so that the very larger projects like Botany and Cabramatta and T2A in the inland projects, we don't have them for the smaller projects currently, but it's something that we're looking to develop KPIs around sustainability for the smaller projects, but the larger projects, yes.
Thank you for that response, Kath. Again, you say we will be typing up all the responses to these questions and by submitting as part of our response. There is a question broadly in there in terms of will we have the opportunity to ask questions live? Unfortunately, there isn't the ability to ask our questions directly in terms of the medium that we're taking to present at the moment. But if you do pop the questions in, there is the opportunity for the teams to respond. The only thing we will not be discussing today is any questions in relation to the tender process. Those will be managed separately outside of the session. There's a question around how many attendees are online today. Wayne's already put a response into the chat. The current has been around 165 attendees so far in the session. There is a question in relation to panels for our registered training organisations. I will just clarify the appropriate response before answering that question.
Richard, it's Richard Tudor here. I can answer that one actually. We have an existing panel. An existing technical training panel for ARTC that's already in place, and the scope of that panel already includes the training for protection officers, things like that. If you want to know more about that panel, what I'll do is I'll give Alice or ask Alice to put my email address on the wrap-up email, and if you want to reach out to me by email, I can give you more information about that panel.
Thank you for clarifying that, Richard. And yes, we will be providing more information as part of the wrap-up. Okay, I'm just reading through some of these questions. Okay. Okay, there are not a lot of other questions coming at the moment that we're able to respond to at the minute. So I'll just give it another minute to see if any other questions come in.
Richard, I've probably got one that's come through. There's clarifying that the tender now on TenderLink is for the safe working panel. Those of us who are self-performers only need to register our interest for the VETA questionnaire and wait for further details to come through. And that's correct if you're a self-performer.
Thank you for clarifying that one, Richard. Okay, there's a couple of questions coming in terms of the K2Me functionality. We'll look at providing some additional information in that with our response to it. And yeah, there's a couple of additional requests for information, so we'll look at getting those sent through. Okay. The rest relate to, I think, the tender process. So what I will do, if there are no other questions coming in, I would actually like to hand across to Wayne Johnson, who's just going to put a bit of a summarise and close the session at the moment before we'll pass across to Kath for a safety share. Thank you. Hand over to Wayne.
Thanks, Richard. Did note, I just saw some questions coming through once I worked out how to open the question board. So I think for those people that are out there who have raised questions, there will be a follow-up and some emails here around that the tender process has just been concluded. And there's a couple of others there. We might think about how you can ask questions live for a future session. So it's probably a takeaway for us. Now you can see today the number of dimensions that are happening across the entire program that still continue to be worked on in parallel. And there's some information still to come out through different forums about how we provide that more discreetly through the Hunter Valley, the interstate, the major construction team, as we also move into the operations of some of the dimensions. There's always a question about how important the work is and linking it back to the importance of today. And to that, I'm going to cross to Kath, who's got a relevant safety share. We generally start the meetings with safety share, but in this case, your executive lead kicked off the session and didn't give Kath a chance to do that safety share. So we're going to anchor with that today.
Thanks, Wayne. I'm going to attempt to share my screen and kick Alice off here, so hopefully that will work. This is safety share I used yesterday for the tender briefing, and I think it kind of sums up for me why SWIP A and some of the other projects in SWIP are so important. So we had this about 6 to 12 months ago now, where we found a work site unsupervised. There were 2 work groups there, and the PO had left the site and they were found about 10 kilometres away attending to a personal issue. So we stood the protection officer down and we suspended the RIW card as per as our process, and we went on to investigate. The PO then left that safe working organisation as they do, and they flitted to another organisation and kept applying back to us to get more work. We completed the investigation, we sat down with the PO, we lifted the suspension, we checked the research, and we checked evidence from the new company of some mentoring, and they were allocated further work with ARTC. A short time later, on the first engagement, we found them on the work site and they hadn't applied the correct level of protection which they'd been engaged to do. Again, we stood them down and we started an investigation. And during that investigation, we found that the person was stressed, they had family issues, they were fatigued or claiming to be fatigued, and didn't feel they had any adequate support from their employer. Now, I'm sure there's lots and lots of things on this one, and I won't go into too much detail, but for me, SWIP A, especially, and working with you both as self-performers and as panel members, being able to support our people, bring them on board when they have made a mistake, being able to mentor them and guide them and give them that support. We want to invest in our people, we want to invest in our safe workers, and we want to make the rail industry safer as a whole. And we want to make sure that our people are supported to be able to do that. So that's really, for me, what our key thing is here today, is trying to make sure that our people go home safely and that our workers are given the support that they need. Thanks, Wayne.
Thanks, Kath. All too real. And I again thank everyone for joining us today and the team for providing this update. And we will talk to everyone again in the new year. For those that we don't get an opportunity to talk to between now and then, we wish you a safe and happy Christmas period. Thanks for joining us today.